What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to be discussing even more new changes in iOS 18.5. We're going to talk about the results from Apple's major lawsuit against Epic Games, some bad news about the iPhone 17, more iOS 19 leaks, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And if you want to continue staying up to date with all the latest news in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and also check out the Apple Den Discord server to continue the conversation. Okay, so this week we did see another new round of beta updates go out. So we did get iOS and iPadOS 18.5 Beta 4, and this was a bigger update than Beta 3 was. However, it was still a very minor update. We did get some backend changes. We did also see some references to the new wallpapers that are coming with iOS 18.5. So always with the 0.5 updates, we get some new Pride wallpapers, and maybe some additional ones will be coming as well based on the descriptions that were found in the code on the back end of Beta 4. And then also another small change that came with Beta 4 is inside of the settings. If you go to General, Apple Care, and Warranty, and then you go into one of your devices, so we're going to wait for it to load here. So if we go into this device, for example, it now shows the exact model. So it says iPhone 16 Pro Max. Before, it would just say like the generation, like it would say iPhone 16. But aside from that change and the backend changes that we saw in the code, there was really nothing to talk about with iOS 18.5 Beta 4, just as expected. I've been telling you guys since the first beta, don't expect much from a 0.5 update. They are never anything drastic, anything major. However, this week we did hear about something that is major, and it's a major concern related to security in Apple, because there's a major security threat. And as far as I know, this is a first for Apple, because there is a major bug, a major vulnerability found in the SDK for AirPlay. So this was found by Oligo Security Research, and they found a new set of vulnerabilities in Apple's AirPlay protocol and the SDK, meaning that all third-party products that integrate AirPlay into their devices are vulnerable. So this is like speakers, like really anything that, it has the AirPlay capability in it could be affected by this vulnerability. And you can see right here, this actually includes a zero-click RCE, which is very significant because you don't have to click anything for the attacker to get code execution on your computer or on your device. It just has to be on your Wi-Fi network. So, these vulnerabilities, the attacker does have to be on your Wi-Fi network. So it's not like it's something that's going to happen remote. Thankfully, that'd be a whole nother deal. That'd be a major red alert, but they do have to be on your Wi-Fi network. And this is a very interesting, round of exploits, an interesting round of vulnerabilities, because these are also wormable, which means that the attacker can go through one device and kind of get to other devices from that one infected device. So here's what they said on their blog post here. It says the vulnerabilities and the attack vectors they enable have been named airborne by Oligo security researchers, as the attacks that they make possible are transmitted via wireless networks or peer-to-peer connections, and allow attackers to fully take over devices and use that access as a launchpad for further exploitation. Oligo has demonstrated that two of the vulnerabilities allow attackers to weaponize wormable zero-click RCE exploits. This means that an attacker can take over certain AirPlay-enabled devices and do things like deploy malware that spreads to devices on any local network the infected device connects to. So that is very interesting, and I'm no security researcher, I'm no expert on this subject, but I did watch a video from Low Level here on YouTube. He explained this in much more detail. So if you're curious about the nitty-gritty about this exploit and these vulnerabilities, I will leave his video linked down in the description below. It's a great watch. Also this week, Apple launched a new web page called Snapshot. So if you go to snapshot.apple.com, it will show your favorites at a glance. So it's basically going to show a lot of the popular, actors. So it's going to basically combine Apple TV, Apple Music, and podcasts all into one. And it's going to show all those popular figures right here. And if you tap on one of their names, this card right here, it will show their latest, song, podcast, or if it's an athlete, it'll show their latest highlights. It will show all that right there. It's really just another way to advertise their services, but I find this to be a very half-baked version of this. It's really confusing because you can't even search on the Snapshot page or anything like that. So you can't even scroll. It kind of just scrolls for you. So really interesting. It's really a cool idea, but it's not really anything too major. But it is something that Apple did release this week, so I did want to touch on it. But by far the biggest news this week comes from Apple's long-lasting lawsuit with Epic Games over, the whole dispute about Apple not allowing developers and applications applications to allow outside payments. Basically, like for Epic, for example, for Epic Games and Fortnite, this whole thing started when they wanted to be able to allow people in their app to go outside of the app to pay for, a subscription or a product or a service, but Apple did not allow that. They made everybody purchase anything in app in the App Store. They would not allow external. But then, of course, just for context real quick, Apple did, get called out on that, and they did have to go back and change it so that people are allowed to make purchases outside the App Store. But Apple tacked on I believe it was a 27% fee on top of that. So that's when, Epic Games and Tim Sweeney, the CEO, kind of called out Apple once again. And it looks like now the judge has sided with Epic Games and basically gave Apple a big L. And this happened on Wednesday, so they found that Apple was in willful violation of the 2021 injunction that was meant to stop anti-competitive pricing tactics. And as part of this new ruling, the judge says that Apple now cannot do these 4 things. They cannot impose any commission or any fee on purchases that consumers make outside an app, restrict developers' style, formatting, or placement of links for purchases outside of an app, block or limit the use of buttons or other calls to action, and they're also not allowed to interfere with consumers' choice to leave an app with anything beyond a neutral message apprising users that they are going to a third-party website. So as a result of this ruling, Tim Sweeney did post on X that Fortnite will be back on the US App Store next week. So it's not been on the App Store in several years, like 4 or 5 years, but now it's officially going to be coming back. And he's also offering a peace proposal to Apple. So he says, if Apple extends the court's friction-free Apple tax-free framework worldwide, not just in the US, we'll return Fortnite to the App Store worldwide and drop current and future litigation on the topic. Epic also said that in June, they will allow developers to launch their own web shops, which will enable out-of-app purchases. So I think this is kind of a win for the consumers and for developers alike. I think Apple has just kind of gone too far with the fees that they're charging, the crazy high fees that they're charging, especially for off-app purchases. Because really that's a small percentage of what Apple is actually making, in the App Store with their services. So I see this as a win for consumers and for developers. I do expect Apple to appeal and kind of get their way in some form. Like they're probably still going to be able to charge some type of fee with their appeal, but it's not going to be as crazy as the 27% that it was. And look, the reality is I don't really see this impacting Apple's App Store business very much. Like there's a very small percentage of people who actually are even going to, go through the hassle of going off app and paying for a service. Like maybe for Netflix and Spotify and things like that, maybe YouTube, maybe for, paying for YouTube Premium, maybe, but the majority of in-app purchases, I would imagine, are not through those applications. And even if they are, most people are just going to want to stick with the App Store where they feel safe. And also it's just much easier. Like people are willing to pay an extra $2 or $3. I'm not saying I agree with this, by the way. I'm just saying the reality of the consumer is a lot of people just feel safe with the App Store. So they're going to continue paying on the App Store because they feel safe and they're too lazy really to go offsite and make an account or do whatever. Basically what I'm trying to say is I don't think this is going to impact Apple's business very much, but it is going to impact the profits of like Epic Games and others who have millions of users trying to purchase things off app. So what are your thoughts on this ruling? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Just what are your thoughts overall on this entire topic? And we're actually already starting to see impacts from this because Spotify, they actually updated the iPhone app with out-of-app payment options. So if you're in the US, you can now, go outside of the App Store to purchase a subscription. So they said this in their blog post: in a victory for consumers, artists, creators, and authors, Apple has approved Spotify's US app update. After nearly a decade, this will finally allow us to freely show clear pricing information and links to purchase, fostering transparency and choice for US consumers. Because if you remember, if you've been following the news for the past few years, aside from Epic Games, Spotify was the other big company that was really getting upset at Apple charging these crazy high fees, and they made it known. They vocalized that, and now, of course, they are happy that their update did get approved. You can see it's version 9.0.40 that allows those out-of-app purchases. Now, we also got some updates this week on iOS 19, starting with the Google CEO suggesting that iOS 19 will feature built-in Gemini support. So we've been seeing this in the code. We've been hearing about this for several months now, so this is not news, but But the big news is that the Google CEO was saying that it is coming, basically confirming that all those code references are true and that we should be seeing that Gemini support as early as the first beta of iOS 19. So we should see, in about a month now, we should see if that's actually going to be coming. But how I would imagine that going is down here in the Apple Intelligence and Siri section, right underneath of extensions. I would imagine that we're going to have all the different services right there. So if you want to use ChatGPT, it will be right there. If you want to use Gemini, there will be another little section there where you can go into that and, kind of enable that as well. And there's probably going to be an option to choose a default. So what you want to default to, whether that's ChatGPT, Siri, Gemini, and if there are any others, those will probably be there as well. And speaking of iOS 19, we also heard this week from Mac Rumors that Apple is already testing iOS 19.4 with the personalized Siri feature. So of course, those personalized Siri features should be coming in iOS 19, and they may be coming in 19.4. We don't exactly know when those are going to come yet, but that is being tested right now, according to the analytics logs from Mac Rumors. We also saw the Raycast iOS application launch this week. So Raycast is a very big macOS application that essentially replaces Spotlight and makes Spotlight a lot more useful. So this has now come to iOS, and it's actually pretty interesting. It's not as good as macOS just yet because they're not able to, obviously iOS is sandbox. You're not able to do as much as like you can on macOS, but you can see here that it has a lot of pretty awesome features. So if you go into the application, you can see that you can ask Raycast AI. You can also change this by tapping on it. So if you wanted to ask questions for like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, DeepSeek, all these, you can do that right here. You have access to all the models inside the application. That's cool. But the real cool part about it are the notes, the snippets, and the quick links. So for example, if you go into snippets, this allows you to basically write faster by using snippets. So if I go to plus right here and we name this snippet like book recommendations, for example. Okay, cool. So we have a bunch of book recommendations right there. So we're just going to hit on create, and now we have book recommendations. So anytime I tap right here, it will copy that full text right there. So you could also search for this inside of the Raycast application. So anytime you're in here, if you just swipe down in the app, it kind of acts as Spotlight, and I search for book recommendations, for example, and I simply tap on it, it will copy all the content of that snippet, which is really cool, very useful. This does also sync across devices as well. So if you have Raycast on macOS, it will sync from iOS to macOS as well, which is a big feature. We also have quick links, which does essentially the same thing that you got for snippets, just with links. So if you want to tap on plus right here and you put in a link, you could have that right there and you can name it. And then anytime you want to access that, you can just swipe down in Raycast and find that right there. Like if I search for book recommendations, you could do the same with links. And of course, you do also have, notes. If you want to create quick notes, you can do that right there. You have Ask AI, you have, all these different things right here, and you can customize this in the top left. You can kind of add things in here and change it around if you would like to. It's pretty powerful, and it does take some time to set up and, get running, but it is pretty cool that it has finally launched on iOS. If you're interested, I will leave a link down in the description below. Also this week, we saw the launch of the Meta AI application. So if you're interested in Meta AI, you can now download that, especially if you have the Meta Ray-Bans. This will sync up with those, and you can do things like talk to Meta AI. You can get inspired and remix prompts. You can create, edit, and restyle images. You can do a lot of the stuff you can do with ChatGPT, but now with Meta AI. And the only thing that makes this cool is, again, that you can pair it and kind of work around with your Meta Ray-Ban. So that's an application you might want to download as well. It did just launch this week. And then, as if we haven't talked about AI enough, ChatGPT also saw an update this week that allows you to have shopping options. So if I search for find good men's shirts for me in size large, you can see that we now have this kind of Google-esque carousel right here of different men's shirts. You can see Amazon, Ralph Lauren, all those. It shows the stars, the price, and everything right there. So this is pretty cool, and you can see it does say products are chosen independently. Learn more. You can learn more about why those showed up. But this is new with shopping results in ChatGPT. Now going back to iOS 18.5, the latest beta in my experience has been the best beta yet for iOS 18.5. I said in my What's New video that I don't expect it to be much of a difference, but it's actually been a bigger difference than I think. It's nothing too major, but if you're going from one beta to another and using it every single day, you can tell a difference, especially in the the battery life. I didn't have, a terrible battery life, but I didn't have excellent battery life either. It is slightly better here with beta 4, which is great. It does have an A at the end of the build number, so that does make sense. And of course, performance here, you can see my Geekbench scores. Performance is also just fine. I didn't really see a big bump in performance, but for battery life, I did. And so far, so good with 18.5 beta 4. If you're having any issues, or if you just want to share your experience though, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And then as far as what to expect next, I would expect the RC or the release candidate build to come next week on the week of May 5th. That should be, the final beta that we get before the official release, most likely coming on Monday, May 12th. And then of course, after the RC, we should be seeing the iOS 18.6 beta start. Not after the RC, after the final release of iOS 18.5, we should see the 18.6 betas kick off as early as that week, maybe the following week. Now, moving on to some more Apple news. This week, we heard that the upcoming iPhone 17s might have 12 gigabytes of RAM across the board. So all iPhone 17 models might have 12 gigs of RAM to support the next kind of round of Apple Intelligence. So we heard this from Digital Chat Station over on Weibo, and he said this, and it kind of corroborates what we already heard from Ming-Chi Kuo, who said that even the base model is going to get 12 gigs of RAM, but if it does not for some reason, the iPhone 18 base model will have 12 gigs of RAM. So that's exciting to hear. We can never really have too much RAM, in my opinion. But that's about where the good news ends, because we also have really bad news regarding the iPhone 17 lineup, because we're now hearing that the scratch-resistant anti-reflective display coating has been canceled. This is something I've been looking forward to for years on the iPhone, and we finally thought that it was coming with the iPhone 17, but now we're hearing that it's been canceled. And this is according to a source that was vetted by Mac Rumors, so it does seem to be a pretty legitimate source here. And this is of course something that a lot of people were expecting, because we've seen this on Samsung phones for quite some time now, but unfortunately it looks like that is going to have to wait until at least the iPhone 18. Now, also late this week, we heard of a new partnership with Apple and Anthropic to build an AI-powered vibe coding platform. So if you're not familiar with the term vibe coding, it's been going viral for the past few weeks. It's basically where you just talk to an AI to basically build out a web application, a mobile application, whatever. You can basically just do it while vibing to music. You don't really need to think much because it's all just prompting. So that's what we're hearing might now be coming to a future version of Xcode. So Bloomberg said this: Apple is teaming up with startup Anthropic on a new vibe coding software platform that will use AI to write, edit, and test code on behalf of programmers. The system is a new version of Xcode that will integrate Anthropic's Claude Sonnet model. Apple will roll out the software internally and hasn't yet decided whether to launch it publicly. So that last sentence is key there, because we don't know for sure if this is going to be launched publicly, but at least internally inside Apple, they are going to be vibe coding features that we're going to be using on a daily basis, which is pretty cool. And I really do hope that this does see the light of day. I think this would be pretty awesome to have from Apple, especially if it's already built in kind of to Xcode, which is kind of just a toggle to turn on or off. And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story. And this time it's more of a feel-good story. It's not really about somebody getting arrested and somebody getting stalked and all the violence. I wanted to bring something positive this week. So a Canadian woman named Wendy has a mother and a father with dementia, and neither of them use a phone. So when they'd wander off, which happened often, it became a stressful guessing game. And sometimes they were just having dinner with somebody or visiting neighbors. But of course, the family had no way to know since they didn't have a phone and they did not communicate with them. And by the way, if you're wondering if this is a common occurrence, according to Public Safety Canada, 60% of those with dementia will go missing at some point, and if they're not found within 12 hours, there's a 50% chance that they will be found injured or dead from hypothermia, dehydration, or drowning. So with that in mind, Wendy and her siblings got creative. They hid AirTags in their parents' belongings. So basically in their dad's walker, they put an AirTag, and they also sewed an AirTag to their mom's purse and later to a hidden pocket. Sometimes the AirTags would beep, which did confuse the parents, but every time they explained it to them, the parents accepted it, and they knew that they just wanted to help keep them safe. And Wendy was not the only one doing this, because another woman named Diane had a similar issue. Her 94-year-old mother wandered away from a retirement home twice, so she stuck a GPS tracker that was meant for cars on her mom's walker. It even had a geofence that pinged her phone if her mom left the property. So I think think this is a really unique and a really awesome, way to implement AirTags into daily life. So if you have a family member or a loved one with dementia, it could be a good idea to stick an AirTag on them so you can always track them, since of course, again, like we said, they do like to wander off and they could end up injured or worse. So I just thought this is a kind of a feel-good story and kind of an idea for those of you out there. If you ever are in the situation where you have a loved one or a family member with dementia, at least this is an idea that I can hopefully plant in your head so you can maybe, find them if they do ever walk away and get lost. Anyways, guys, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I've been kind of slow with the uploads here on the channel. Honestly, my mental health hasn't been the greatest in the past few months, so I did just want to kind of take a break and kind of just, regather myself before iOS 19 and everything launches. So I'm hoping to get back into a lot more consistent videos and a lot more unique videos than just Apple Weekly every week, and that's all you guys get. So I feel bad. Trust me, I want to be bringing you guys more content. It's just hard sometimes. So just bear with me. It's just part of the game. I've been doing this a long time. I know it's just part of the game. So just stay tuned. I just wanted to at least say something so you guys aren't out in the dark thinking I'm just like putting in no effort to the channel. It's just not the case. But anyways, nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts, all your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you guys soon.